This isn't a pharmacy, sweetie. Flight attendant Cheryl Martinez dangled 12-year-old Zara Williams' prescription inhaler between two fingers like a contaminated tissue. Maybe try the gas station bathroom next time. The inhaler hit the bottom of the trash bin with a hollow thud. Gate 47 at Chicago O'Hare fell silent. Passengers looked up from their phones. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A mother pulled her toddler closer. Zara stood frozen, her small chest rising and falling in careful, measured breaths. The kind of breathing you learn when your lungs betray you, when adults decide your medicine looks suspicious. Cheryl dusted off her hands with theatrical disgust, her 15-year veteran badge catching the fluorescent light. Around them, American Airlines Flight 2847 to Atlanta sat waiting. Delayed. Again. Have you ever watched a child's dignity crumble in real time, knowing one phone call could change everything? It started 20 minutes earlier, 2:47 p.m. Gate 47 buzzed with the usual pre-boarding chaos. Business travelers pecked at laptops. Families corralled restless children. Flight 2847 sat at the gate, its engines quiet, waiting for the afternoon departure slot. Zara Williams approached the American Airlines counter with the careful steps of someone who'd learned to navigate adult spaces alone. Her navy blazer was wrinkle-free despite the long morning. Her rolling suitcase followed obediently behind. "Excuse me," she said to Cheryl, who was sorting boarding passes with the mechanical efficiency of 15 years on the job. "I have asthma. My doctor said I should pre-board to avoid the rush." Cheryl didn't look up. "Unaccompanied minors board with families. I have my inhaler right here." Zara pulled the small blue device from her jacket pocket. The prescription label was clearly visible. Zara Williams, albuterol sulfate, Dr. Patricia Carter, Chicago Children's Hospital. Now Cheryl looked. Her eyes moved from the inhaler to Zara's face, then to her clothes, then back to the inhaler. A slow, skeptical scan. Cheryl held out her hand. "Let me see that." Zara handed over her medicine. Cheryl turned the inhaler over in her palm, examining it like a customs agent inspecting contraband. She shook it, held it up to the light, frowned. "This looks generic," she announced, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Real prescriptions don't come in plain packaging like this." The businessman folded his newspaper completely now. A woman with twins stopped organizing her diaper bag. Phones emerged from pockets. "It's from Children's Hospital," Zara said quietly. "The label has my name on it." "Labels can be faked, sweetie." Cheryl's voice carried that particular tone adults use when they've decided you're lying. "I've seen kids try to bring all kinds of things on planes, especially—" She let her gaze travel meaningfully over Zara's face. "Especially what?" The words hung in the air like smoke. India Thompson, a marketing executive traveling back to Atlanta, had been watching from seat 23A in the gate area. Something about the interaction made her stomach twist. She opened Facebook and started a live video. "Y'all seeing this?" she whispered to her phone. "They're giving this little girl a hard time about her asthma medicine." 7 viewers immediately. Then 12. Back at the counter, Cheryl was building her case. Unaccompanied minors aren't supposed to carry prescription medications without proper documentation. "Where's your medical travel form?" Zara's confidence wavered for the first time. "Medical travel form?" "Exactly." Cheryl's smile was sharp. "Real sick kids know about medical travel forms." The security guard, Marcus Johnson, had been watching from his post near the gate. Cheryl caught his eye and waved him over with an exaggerated gesture of concern. "Marcus, we might have a situation here." 2:52 p.m. 8 minutes until boarding. Marcus approached with the measured walk of airport security. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that made conversations stop. "What's the problem?" he asked. "This child is trying to board with what appears to be fake medication," Cheryl explained, holding up the inhaler. "No proper documentation. Claims she has asthma but doesn't know basic medical travel procedures. India's viewer count climbed 47, 68, 91. That's not fake, Zara said, her voice smaller now. It's prescribed to me. Can you prove that? Marcus asked. Zara reached into her folder and pulled out a copy of her medical records, a thick stack of papers from Chicago Children's Hospital, emergency room visits, specialist consultations, years of documented asthma treatment. Cheryl barely glanced at them. These could be printed from anywhere. Kids today know how to use computers. The woman with twins muttered something to her husband. He shook his head in disgust. Not at Cheryl, at Zara. Maybe she shouldn't be flying alone if she's really sick, the woman said, loud enough to be heard. India's phone buzzed with comments. This is discrimination. Poor baby. Record everything. Where are her parents? 93 viewers and climbing. 2:55 p.m., 5 minutes until boarding. You know what I think? Cheryl leaned against the counter, settling in for the long haul. I think someone's playing dress-up. Unaccompanied minors don't fly first class, honey. Someone's trying to scam their way into a better seat. First class. The words hit like a revelation. Other passengers craned their necks trying to see Zara's boarding pass. Gate agent Kevin Park emerged from behind the counter. Mid-30s, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd seen every airport scam in the book. Problem here? He asked Cheryl. Possible ticket fraud, she said. This child claims to have a first-class seat and medical needs, but her story doesn't add up. Kevin's eyebrows rose. First-class tickets for unaccompanied minors were rare, expensive. They required special authorization, guardian approval, payment methods that most families couldn't access. Can I see your ticket? He asked Zara. She handed over her boarding pass. Kevin examined it with the same suspicious intensity Cheryl had used on the inhaler. Seat 2A, he announced. That's a $2,200 upgrade from coach. Murmurs rippled through the gate area. Passengers exchanged glances. A 12-year-old girl, first class, alone. The math didn't compute in their minds. India's live stream hit 156 viewers. Comments flooded faster than she could read them. 2:57 p.m., 3 minutes until boarding. I'm going to need to see additional identification, Kevin said, and we'll need to verify the payment method for this ticket. First-class purchases require adult authorization. Zara reached into her folder again. Her movements were still calm, but something had shifted. Her shoulders straightened slightly. Her chin lifted a degree. She pulled out her phone and typed a single message. Then she looked up at Kevin, at Cheryl, at Marcus, at the growing crowd of passengers watching her like she was airport entertainment. I think, she said quietly, you should call your supervisor. The first boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. First class and elite members were invited to board, but nobody moved toward the gate. Everyone was watching the 12-year-old girl who somehow had seat 2A and the quiet confidence of someone who knew something they didn't. 2:59 p.m. 1 minute until boarding. Gate supervisor Patricia Carter emerged from the jet bridge with the brisk efficiency of someone accustomed to solving problems. 40-something silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, the kind of supervisor who'd climbed the ranks by never backing down. What's the holdup? She asked Kevin. Potential ticket fraud, he replied, gesturing toward Zara. Unaccompanied minor with a first-class seat. No proper medical documentation. Suspicious prescription medication. Patricia's gaze swept over Zara with practiced assessment. I am 12 years old, black, alone, first class. In her experience, these pieces rarely fit together legitimately. Let me see everything, she said. Zara handed over her documents again. Boarding pass, medical records, ID card. The same papers she'd shown 3 times already. Patricia examined each document with deliberate slowness. Behind her, passengers in the boarding line grew restless. The gate agent's microphone crackled with another announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, We're experiencing a minor delay. Please remain seated while we resolve a documentation issue. India's Facebook live stream hit 312 viewers. Her phone battery dropped to 68%. She'd been recording for 12 minutes now, and the comments section exploded with outrage. This is disgusting! Call the news! Where's the manager? Someone help that baby! This is why I don't fly American. Screenshots began circulating on Twitter. The hashtag Gate47 started trending in Chicago. 3:00 p.m. Boarding time. These medical records look comprehensive, Patricia admitted, flipping through the stack. But anyone can print hospital letterhead these days. Medical tourism scams are increasingly sophisticated. She held up Zara's inhaler, examining it under the harsh gate lighting. This packaging does look generic. Most prescription medications have more detailed labeling. Marcus shifted his weight, hand moving unconsciously toward his radio. In his 8 years of airport security, he'd learned to trust the airline staff's judgment. They knew their business. "Ma'am," he said to Zara, "I'm going to need you to step aside for additional screening." The circle was tightening. Airline staff on 3 sides, security guard on the 4th. Zara stood in the center, a 12-year-old island surrounded by adult authority. Other passengers began taking sides. The businessman with the newspaper shook his head in disgust. The mother with twins whispered to her husband about kids these days. But a college student near Gate 46 had started recording on her iPhone. An elderly black woman in the front row of the gate area stood up, watching with careful attention. "This is ridiculous," said David Kim, a software engineer heading home to Atlanta. "She's a kid with asthma. Let her on the plane." "She's trying to scam the system," countered Janet Walsh, a real estate agent from Lincoln Park. "My daughter's 12. She wouldn't know how to book a first-class ticket." The divide was forming, passengers choosing sides based on what they believed 12-year-old black girls were capable of. 3:02 p.m. Official boarding delay. "I'm going to need to contact Child Protective Services," Patricia announced. "An unaccompanied minor with questionable documentation and expensive tickets raises red flags for human trafficking." The words hit like a physical blow. Human trafficking. The ultimate escalation. The nuclear option that justified any level of intervention. Zara's breathing hitched. Not from asthma, but from the weight of accusation. Being treated like a criminal was one thing. Being treated like a victim of trafficking was another level entirely. India's viewer count spiked to 847. Someone had shared her live stream in a Facebook group with 15,000 members. Local news stations monitored social media for breaking stories. This was becoming one. "That's enough," called the elderly black woman from the front row. Dorothy Williams Johnson, retired teacher, grandmother of 6. She walked toward the commotion with the determined stride of someone who'd fought these battles before. "This child is being harassed," Dorothy announced. "I've been watching for 15 minutes. She's shown every document you've asked for. Her medicine is clearly labeled. Her ticket is legitimate. What exactly is the problem here?" Patricia turned to face the new challenger. "Ma'am, this is an airline security matter. Please return to your seat." "I'm a paying customer on this flight," Dorothy replied. "And I'm watching a child be discriminated against because adults can't believe she belongs in first class." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Discrimination. The thing everyone was thinking but nobody wanted to say. "This isn't about race," Cheryl protested, but her voice carried the defensive tone of someone who knew exactly what it was about. 3:04 p.m. Zara checked her phone. One new message. "Daddy's handling it, baby girl. Hold your head high." She looked up at the circle of adults surrounding her. Patricia with her clipboard of authority. Kevin with his suspicious glare. Cheryl with her 15-year veteran badge. Marcus with his hand on his radio. Something shifted in her posture. The scared child facade melted away, replaced by something else. Quiet confidence. The kind of calm that comes from knowing help is on the way. "I think," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the gate area, You should take this call. Her phone buzzed once. Then Patricia's radio crackled. Then Kevin's computer screen flashed with an urgent message. From the jet bridge, a hurried voice called out, "Patricia! Executive team to Gate 47, now!" The airport's PA system hummed to life. "Operations management to Gate 47. Priority response requested." India's Facebook Live exploded with viewers. 1,247 and climbing fast. The comments moved too quickly to read, but one word appeared repeatedly: viral. Patricia's radio squawked with static and urgent voices. Kevin's computer screen is filled with priority alerts. Marcus received a call on his cell phone that made his face go pale. Through it all, Zara stood quietly in the center of the chaos, no longer looking like a child being interrogated. She looked like someone waiting for the cavalry to arrive. And from the expression on her face, they were almost here. The businessman folded his newspaper completely and stared. The mother with twins stopped organizing her diaper bag. Even the college student lowered her iPhone, sensing that whatever was about to happen was bigger than a simple documentation dispute. Gate 47 had become the center of O'Hare International Airport's attention, and 12-year-old Zara Williams was the eye of the storm. 3:06 p.m. James Wilson, airport operations manager, arrived at Gate 47 with the hurried pace of someone responding to a crisis. 22 years at O'Hare had taught him to recognize when situations required immediate attention. The combination of social media alerts, executive calls, and security flags had triggered every warning system in his office. He approached Patricia with the grim efficiency of damage control. "What's the situation?" "Unaccompanied minor with questionable documentation," Patricia explained. "Potential ticket fraud, possible trafficking concerns. We've followed all protocols." Wilson's radio erupted with static. "Operations Manager Wilson, please take line 1 immediately. Corporate priority call." He stepped aside, pressing his earpiece. The voice on the other end was crisp, urgent, unmistakably executive-level authority. Regional Vice President Angela Hayes calling from American Airlines headquarters in Fort Worth. "Jim, you need to de-escalate the situation at Gate 47 immediately. We have a code black discrimination incident going viral across social media platforms. The current Facebook live stream has 1,847 viewers and is climbing exponentially. Twitter, hashtag Gate47 discrimination is trending in 3 states. This is about to become a corporate crisis." Wilson's face went pale. He glanced at Zara, still standing calmly in the center of the commotion. 25 minutes of interrogation, and she looked more composed than the adults surrounding her. "Ma'am, the passenger appears to be a standard unaccompanied minor case." "The passenger," Hayes interrupted, her voice sharp with urgency, "is Zara Williams. Her father is Damon Williams, board member of American Airlines and managing partner of Williams Investment Group. He owns 3.2% of our outstanding stock through his investment firm and chairs our corporate governance committee." The words hit Wilson like a freight train. Damon Williams. Damon Williams, who'd led the board's diversity initiative for 3 years, who'd personally recruited 2 minority board members, who'd pushed through the company's most aggressive anti-discrimination policies in company history. Wilson's eyes moved from his radio to Zara, seeing her completely differently now. The confident posture wasn't defiance, it was breeding. The calm demeanor wasn't unusual for a scared child. It was the composure of someone raised in boardrooms and taught to handle pressure. The expensive first-class ticket wasn't fraud. It was pocket change for a family worth $847 million. "Oh, God," Wilson whispered, watching India's viewer count tick higher in real time. 2,156, 2,203, 2,287. "It gets exponentially worse," Hayes continued. "Mr. Williams is currently inbound from New York in his private Gulfstream G650, ETA 38 minutes. His law firm, Williams & Associates, specializes in corporate discrimination cases. They've never lost." Delta settled for $12 million in 2019 after their gate agent incident. United paid $8 million in 2021 for the Louisville case. Southwest paid $15 million last year for the Phoenix situation. Wilson felt his career flashing before his eyes. What are the immediate instructions? Mr. Williams has already contacted our chief legal officer. He's not seeking monetary compensation, yet. He wants systemic change, mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing employees, third-party discrimination monitoring systems, monthly diversity compliance reports directly to the board, real-time social media monitoring protocols. The operations manager looked at the scene unfolding before him. Cheryl, still holding Zara's inhaler like evidence of a crime. Kevin, convinced he'd caught a sophisticated ticket scammer. Marcus, hand on his radio, ready to escalate to airport police. Patricia, preparing to contact Child Protective Services for suspected human trafficking. All of them were completely unaware they were systematically harassing the daughter of their employer's most influential board member. "And if we don't comply?" Wilson asked, though he already knew the answer. $40 to $60 million lawsuit. Congressional hearings on systemic airline discrimination. Department of Transportation investigation. Stock price freefall. Regulatory sanctions. Do I need to continue? Wilson ended the call and approached Zara directly. The adults who'd been surrounding her stepped back unconsciously, sensing a seismic shift in dynamics they couldn't comprehend. "Miss Williams," he said quietly, "I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding." Zara looked up at him with eyes that seemed far older than 12. "Yes, sir. I believe there has been." Her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled, the first genuine expression of joy she'd shown since approaching Cheryl's counter 27 minutes earlier. "My daddy says he'll be here in 36 minutes, she announced to the circle of adults who'd spent the last half hour questioning her credibility, examining her medicine, and doubting her right to exist in first class. "He's bringing Mr. Patterson and Ms. Rodriguez from his legal team." Patricia's clipboard clattered to the floor. Kevin's confident expression melted into confusion mixed with dawning horror. Cheryl's grip on the inhaler loosened so dramatically she nearly dropped it. "Legal team?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking slightly. India's live stream had exploded. Viewers, 3,147 and climbing. The comments section moved too fast to read, but certain phrases appeared repeatedly. "Daddy's a board member!" "They're so screwed!" "Justice incoming!" "This is about to get good!" "Corporate head's gonna roll!" Someone had screenshot the key moments and posted them to Twitter with the caption, "12-year-old black girl with asthma harassed by American Air staff for 30 minutes. Plot twist, her dad owns the company. Hashtag Zara Williams. Airline discrimination, hashtag justice. The tweet had 847 retweets in 4 minutes. Wilson's radio crackled again. This time it was Margaret Foster, O'Hare's executive director. "Jim, I just received calls from the mayor's office, the Chicago NAACP, and Channel 7 News. They're all monitoring social media. ABC7 is dispatching a news crew with ETA for 15 minutes. We need this resolved before it becomes the lead story on the evening news." Too late for that, Wilson thought, watching real-time social media metrics climb on his phone. Zara Williams was trending nationally now. American Airlines was trending with predominantly negative sentiment. The company's official Twitter account was being flooded with demands for accountability. 3:14 p.m. Angela Hayes materialized at Gate 47 with the supernatural speed of crisis management. She'd caught the first available flight from Dallas the moment her assistant had shown her the viral video metrics. Regional Vice President of Customer Experience, 30-year airline veteran, specialist in corporate damage control. She moved through the airport with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to cleaning up million-dollar disasters. She surveyed the scene with professional assessment. Dozens of smartphone cameras recording, confused employees clustering at safe distances, viral video documentation in progress, news crews en route, and at the center of it all, a 12-year-old girl who'd been systematically dehumanized for the crime of flying first class while black. Hayes approached Zara directly, ignoring the airline staff who'd created the crisis. "Miss Williams, I'm Angela Hayes, Regional Vice President for Customer Experience. On behalf of American Airlines, I want to personally apologize for the discriminatory treatment you've received today. This is not who we are as a company." "Thank you," Zara replied with the polite formality her father had drilled into her. "I appreciate that, Ms. Hayes." Cheryl's face had gone ashen. 15 years of employment, pension benefits, health insurance, all of it flashing before her eyes. Kevin stared at his computer screen, which now displayed priority alerts he'd never seen before, each one escalating the severity of the situation. Patricia clutched her radio like a lifeline to a sinking ship. "The medication?" Hayes said, turning to face Cheryl with barely controlled fury. "Please return Miss Williams' prescription inhaler immediately." Cheryl fumbled with the small blue device, her hands shaking so badly she dropped it twice before successfully placing it in Zara's outstretched palm. "Thank you," Zara said with dignity that highlighted the adult's lack thereof, checking the device for damage before slipping it back into her jacket pocket. Hayes pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. "I'm authorizing immediate first-class boarding for Miss Williams. Full concierge service. Whatever accommodations she requires." "Ma'am," Wilson interrupted quietly. "Her father specifically requested that we wait for his arrival." Hayes paused her typing. "ETA? 24 minutes. The gate area had transformed into a corporate apocalypse. Passengers openly recording with smartphones, posting to Instagram stories, going live on TikTok. Airport employees gather at respectful distances, whispering among themselves. India's Facebook live stream is approaching 4,200 viewers, with shares multiplying exponentially across every social media platform known to humanity. Local news alerts were already pushing to phones across Chicago. Discrimination incident at O'Hare goes viral. American Airlines staff accused of harassing 12-year-old passenger. Zara stood in the center of it all, no longer the frightened child who'd asked to pre-board 31 minutes earlier. She was the calm eye of a corporate hurricane, the daughter of a board member who'd been taught from birth to document discrimination, maintain dignity, and let institutional systems work on her behalf. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her father. "Proud of how you handled yourself, baby girl. The whole board is watching the live stream. Change is coming. See you soon." She looked up at the adults who'd questioned her medicine, doubted her ticket, accused her of fraud, suggested she was a trafficking victim, demanded additional identification, and treated her like a criminal. All because they couldn't believe a 12-year-old black girl belonged in first class. All because unconscious bias had convinced them that black children don't have wealthy parents. "While we wait for my daddy," Zara said with quiet dignity that made every adult in earshot feel small, "maybe someone could explain why my prescription asthma inhaler from Chicago Children's Hospital looked fake to you." The question hung in the air like an indictment. Because there was no good answer. The inhaler was genuine. The prescription was legitimate. The medical records were comprehensive. The ticket was valid. The only thing that had seemed suspicious to them was her race. Hayes closed her eyes briefly, calculating corporate damage in real time. Stock price implications. Legal exposure. Regulatory scrutiny. Congressional oversight. Media coverage. Social media backlash. Customer boycotts. Employee terminations. Policy overhauls. All because experienced airline professionals couldn't believe a black child belonged in first class. 22 minutes until Damon Williams arrived with Patterson and Rodriguez, two of the most feared discrimination attorneys in the country. 22 minutes to figure out how to save American Airlines from itself. 3:22 p.m. The Gulfstream G650 touched down at O'Hare's executive terminal with the precision of corporate power in motion. Damon Williams had made the flight from Teterboro in record time, his pilot pushing the aircraft to its limits while his legal team prepared war plans at 41,000 feet. Inside the main terminal, American Airlines crisis management machinery had kicked into overdrive. Hayes coordinated with corporate headquarters via encrypted video conference. Wilson managed airport operations while monitoring real-time social media analytics. The company's stock price had dropped 1.8% in after-hours trading as Zara Williams trended across 6 countries. Current exposure assessment, Hayes spoke into her headset, addressing the emergency board meeting convened via video conference. Viral video metrics, 47,000 Facebook views, 23,000 Twitter impressions, 156,000 TikTok views, and climbing exponentially. Sentiment analysis shows 94% negative response. Legal estimates potential damages between $40 and $60 million based on precedent cases. Her phone buzzed with notifications from the company's media monitoring service. CNN had picked up the story. The Today Show was requesting interviews. Congressional offices were issuing statements about systemic airline discrimination. At Gate 47, Zara sat calmly in a first-class waiting area chair that Hayes had personally arranged. She reviewed text messages from her father while sipping apple juice and eating complimentary cookies, the kind of premium service that had been denied to her 25 minutes earlier. India's Facebook live stream had evolved into a full documentary. She provided real-time commentary for her 5,847 viewers, explaining the corporate hierarchy responses she was witnessing. Screenshots of her broadcast were being shared faster than her phone could track. "Y'all, this is history being made," she narrated quietly. "This little girl just exposed an entire system with one phone call. Her daddy's about to walk into this airport and change everything." 3:28 p.m. Damon Williams entered Terminal 3, flanked by 2 of Chicago's most formidable discrimination attorneys. David Patterson, senior partner at Patterson & Associates, who'd never lost a corporate bias case. Maria Rodriguez, specialist in federal civil rights law, who'd personally argued 12 cases before appellate courts. Williams moved through the airport with the controlled intensity of someone who'd built a billion-dollar investment firm from nothing. 52 years old, impeccably dressed despite the emergency flight, carrying himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to making corporate executives sweat. Airport security recognized him immediately. Williams Investment Group owned stakes in 17 major corporations, including 3.2% of American Airlines. His private equity firm employed 847 people across 12 cities. His foundation had donated $23 million to education initiatives in the past 5 years. He was not someone you wanted to make angry, especially when you'd spent 35 minutes systematically humiliating his 12-year-old daughter. 3:31 p.m. Williams arrived at Gate 47 to find a scene that would have been comical if it weren't so damaging to his company's reputation. Dozens of passengers recording with phones, news crews setting up equipment, airport executives hovering nervously, airline staff who looked like they were facing execution, and in the center of it all, his daughter, sitting with perfect posture and dignity, reviewing homework while adults scrambled to undo the damage they'd caused. "Daddy!" Zara stood and walked toward him with the composure she'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. Williams embraced her, his fury carefully controlled. "How are you feeling, baby girl?" "I'm okay. My inhaler's fine." Ms. Hayes apologized. She gestured toward the regional VP, who approached with the careful steps of someone walking toward judgment. "Mr. Williams," Hayes extended her hand. "Angela Hayes, Regional Vice President, I want to personally—" "Save it," Williams interrupted quietly. "I watched the entire live stream from my plane. I saw how your employees treated my daughter, how they questioned her medicine, accused her of fraud, suggested human trafficking. Over 30 minutes of systematic discrimination." Patterson stepped forward with a legal pad filled with notes. "Mr. Williams, we've documented 17 separate instances of discriminatory behavior captured on video, civil rights violations under federal statutes, 42 U.S.C. 1981 and 1983, potential damages." "David," Williams held up a hand. "Let's hear what American Airlines proposes to do about this first." The corporate executives exchanged glances. They'd prepared for this moment during the 20-minute flight from headquarters, gaming out scenarios and calculating acceptable losses. Hayes pulled out her tablet. We're prepared to offer full compensation. First-class flights for life for your entire family. A $250,000 settlement for the emotional distress caused to Zara. Public apology from our CEO. Immediate termination of the employees involved. Williams looked at his daughter, who was listening with the attention of someone who'd been taught to understand business negotiations from childhood. That's insulting, he said simply. You think this is about money? Sir, we want to make this right. Making this right means ensuring it never happens to another child. Williams pulled out his own tablet, displaying a comprehensive reform proposal his team had drafted during the flight. Here's what systemic change looks like. He began reading from prepared notes. Mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing employees, conducted quarterly with certification requirements. Third-party monitoring system that analyzes customer interactions for discriminatory patterns. Real-time social media monitoring with immediate escalation protocols for discrimination incidents. Patterson added, monthly diversity compliance reports submitted directly to the board of directors. Anonymous reporting system for employees and customers to flag bias incidents. Customer advocate position created at the executive level, reporting directly to the CEO. Rodriguez continued. Industry-wide discrimination prevention fund of $5 million annually, managed jointly by major airlines to develop best practices and training programs. Public quarterly progress reports on discrimination reduction metrics. Hayes typed frantically on her tablet, forwarding the demands to the emergency board meeting. The response came back within 90 seconds. Accept all terms immediately. Legal estimates fighting this would cost 40 to 60 million plus irreparable reputational damage. Mr. Williams, Hayes said, American Airlines accepts your proposed reforms. We'll implement these changes within 60 days, with the monitoring systems operational within 30 days. Williams looked around at the crowd of witnesses still recording. The viral nature of the incident had created unprecedented leverage. Corporate accountability through social media had proven more effective than years of traditional legal challenges. There's one more requirement, he said. Public acknowledgement, not a corporate statement buried in press releases. Personal accountability from every employee who participated in discriminating against my daughter. Cheryl stepped forward, her face streaked with tears. Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. I treated Zara terribly because I couldn't believe a young black girl belonged in first class. There's no excuse for what I did. The apology was captured on multiple live streams, recorded by dozens of phones, documented for posterity. Kevin followed. I supported discriminatory actions because I made racist assumptions about your daughter's legitimacy as a first-class passenger. I was completely wrong. Patricia, Marcus, each took responsibility in front of the viral audience that had witnessed their discrimination. Williams nodded. Accountability is the first step toward change. He turned to address the crowd of passengers and cameras directly. This isn't about punishment. It's about progress. My daughter handled 35 minutes of discrimination with more grace than many adults show in comfortable situations. She documented everything, maintained her dignity, and trusted that systems would work. Zara smiled up at her father. You taught me to let my character speak first. And it did, baby girl. And it did. 3:47 p.m. The corporate showdown was over. American Airlines had capitulated completely, accepting reforms that would reshape industry practices. The viral incident had created more systemic change in 45 minutes than years of traditional activism had achieved. Stock prices had stabilized once investors realized the company was responding decisively rather than defensively. Legal exposure was eliminated through comprehensive reform rather than costly litigation. The discrimination incident had transformed into a case study of corporate accountability done right. Williams picked up his daughter's rolling suitcase. Ready to go to Atlanta? Can we fly first class? Zara asked with a mischievous smile. Baby girl, Williams laughed. You can fly anywhere you want, however you want, for the rest of your life. The crowd of witnesses burst into spontaneous applause as father and daughter walked toward the jet bridge, their dignity intact, their victory complete. 6 weeks later, American Airlines Training Center, Dallas-Fort Worth. Cheryl Martinez sat in the front row of Conference Room B, along with 247 other customer service employees participating in the company's new mandatory bias awareness program. The same woman who'd thrown a 12-year-old's inhaler in the trash now served as a case study in unconscious discrimination. The training instructor, Dr. Sarah Carter from Northwestern University's Bias Research Institute, clicked to the next slide. Real-world consequences of unchecked bias. Zara Williams's face appeared on the screen, the viral moment when she'd asked why her medicine looked fake. This incident cost American Airlines $2.3 million in immediate crisis response, Dr. Carter explained. Stock price volatility, emergency board meetings, legal consultations, policy overhauls, but the real cost was human dignity, a child's trust in adult fairness. Cheryl raised her hand. Dr. Carter, I was the flight attendant in this case. I'd like to share what I learned. She stood, facing her colleagues. I convinced myself I was following protocols, but I was really following prejudices. I saw a young black girl with expensive tickets and assumed fraud. I examined her prescription medication like evidence of a crime. I questioned her right to be there based on nothing but race. Murmurs rippled through the room. Real accountability from real people carried more weight than corporate policies. The hardest part, Cheryl continued, was realizing I'm not a bad person who did something racist. I'm a regular person whose unconscious biases led to discriminatory actions. That's actually more dangerous, because I didn't recognize it happening. Dr. Carter nodded. Ms. Martinez demonstrates crucial self-awareness. Bias isn't about conscious hatred. It's about unconscious assumptions that influence behavior in ways we don't recognize. Meanwhile, at Chicago O'Hare, Gate 47 had been transformed. A new digital monitoring system tracked customer interactions in real time, analyzing tone, body language, and response patterns for signs of discriminatory treatment. The AI system, developed jointly by American Airlines and Williams Investment Group, flagged potential bias incidents within minutes, rather than requiring viral videos to expose problems. Patricia Carter, the former gate supervisor who'd escalated Zara's case to Child Protective Services, now worked as a customer advocacy specialist. Her new role involved investigating bias complaints and ensuring fair treatment protocols were followed. Her first-hand experience with discrimination had made her unexpectedly effective at recognizing and preventing similar incidents. I understand what it feels like to be wrong, she explained to new employee trainees. To let assumptions override evidence. To convince yourself you're protecting company interests while actually harming real people. That perspective helps me spot problems before they escalate. The transformation wasn't limited to American Airlines. Within 30 days of the Zara Williams incident, Delta, United, Southwest, and JetBlue had all implemented similar bias monitoring systems. The viral nature of the discrimination had created industry-wide accountability pressure that traditional regulatory approaches had failed to achieve. Congressional hearings had followed, but they focused on positive reform rather than punitive measures. Representative Alexandria Johnson from Illinois praised American Airlines' response during Transportation Committee testimony. When corporations face accountability through social media transparency, they can choose defensiveness or transformation. American Airlines chose transformation. The numbers told the story of systemic change. 23% reduction in customer discrimination complaints across all major airlines in the first quarter, following implementation. 89% of airline employees reported increased awareness of unconscious bias in post-training assessments. $5.2 million invested industry-wide in bias prevention training programs. 47 new customer advocate positions created across major carriers. At Williams Investment Group headquarters in Chicago, Damon Williams reviewed quarterly diversity reports from American Airlines. His assistant, Jennifer Park, summarized the data. Discrimination incidents down 31% year-over-year. Customer satisfaction scores up 18% among minority passengers. Employee bias training completion rate, 100%. Williams smiled, remembering his daughter's calm dignity during 35 minutes of systematic mistreatment. Schedule a board call with American's executive team. I want to hear their 6-month implementation progress directly. The reform initiatives had created unexpected benefits beyond discrimination reduction. Airlines discovered that bias training improved overall customer service quality. Employees who learned to recognize unconscious assumptions about passengers also became better at identifying and meeting diverse customer needs. Marcus Johnson, the security guard who'd been ready to escalate Zara's case to airport police, now served as O'Hare's bias incident response coordinator. His security background helped him recognize potential discrimination situations before they required intervention. I was trained to see threats, he explained to airport staff during monthly bias awareness sessions. But I wasn't trained to recognize when I might be the threat to someone else's dignity. A 12-year-old girl with asthma wasn't a security risk. My assumptions about her were the real danger. The monitoring systems had caught 17 potential bias incidents in their first 60 days of operation. Each case was resolved through immediate intervention and additional training rather than viral social media exposure. The technology created accountability without requiring victims to endure discrimination until it became a public spectacle. India Thompson, whose Facebook live stream had documented the original incident, received recognition from the Chicago NAACP for her role in exposing systemic bias. Her quick thinking to record the discrimination had provided evidence that traditional complaint processes rarely captured. Social media gets criticized for a lot of things, she said during her acceptance speech. But it can also be a tool for justice. When institutions fail to protect people, sometimes we have to protect each other by bearing witness. 6 months after the incident, Zara Williams returned to O'Hare for another flight to Atlanta. She approached Gate 47 with the same rolling suitcase, the same first-class ticket, the same prescription inhaler in her jacket pocket. The difference was transformational. Gate agents greeted her warmly. Security personnel nodded respectfully. The bias monitoring system tracked every interaction, ensuring fair treatment through technological accountability. But the most meaningful change was human. Cheryl Martinez was working at a different gate that day, but she made a point of approaching Zara during boarding. "Zara, I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "Your grace under pressure taught me more about dignity than I'd learned in 50 years. You made me a better person." Zara smiled. "Thank you for learning from it, Ms. Martinez. That's what growth looks like." The exchange was brief, but profound. Accountability has led to education. Education has created understanding. Understanding had fostered genuine change. As Zara boarded her flight, first class, without question, without suspicion, without discrimination, she represented more than successful reform implementation. She embodied the possibility that individual dignity and systemic change could coexist, that real-life stories of injustice could become touching stories of transformation, that Black voices, when amplified by technology and supported by allies, could reshape entire industries. 1 year later, Zara Williams, now 13, stood at the podium of the National Youth Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. Behind her, a banner read, "Dignity in Action, Young Voices for Change." In the audience, 847 students from across the country listened as she shared her story. "When that flight attendant threw my inhaler in the trash, she wasn't just discarding my medicine," Zara said with the same quiet confidence she'd shown at Gate 47. "She was throwing away the idea that I belonged in that space. But here's what I learned that day. Dignity isn't something other people can take from you. It's something you carry inside yourself." The audience erupted in applause. Her father watched from the back of the auditorium, filming on his phone like any proud parent. American Airlines had become an unexpected case study in corporate transformation. The company's quarterly diversity reports showed sustained improvement. Discrimination complaints down 34% year over year, customer satisfaction scores among minority passengers up 27%, employee bias awareness ratings at all-time highs. More importantly, the industry-wide changes had prevented countless other children from experiencing what Zara endured. The bias monitoring systems had flagged 312 potential discrimination incidents across major airlines in their first year, resolving each through immediate intervention and additional training. Dr. Sarah Carter's research team at Northwestern had documented the Williams effect, the phenomenon where single viral incidents of discrimination, when met with comprehensive reform rather than defensive denial, could create lasting institutional change across entire industries. Traditional civil rights progress often required decades of legal battles, Dr. Carter explained in her latest paper. But strategic use of social media transparency, combined with corporate board-level pressure, compressed that timeline from decades to months. The touching stories emerging from this transformation went beyond policy changes. Kevin Park, the gate agent who'd questioned Zara's ticket validity, had used his experience to develop bias recognition training now used by airports across North America. Patricia Carter had created the Customer Advocacy Network, connecting discrimination prevention specialists across the travel industry. Even Marcus Johnson had found purpose in his transformation. His security background helped him develop rapid response protocols for bias incidents, preventing escalation while protecting dignity. But the most powerful change was cultural. A generation of airline employees had learned that unconscious bias wasn't a character flaw. It was a human tendency that required constant vigilance and systemic accountability to overcome. India Thompson's original Facebook Live video had been viewed 2.3 million times. It was now used in corporate training programs, university sociology courses, and social justice workshops as an example of how citizen journalism could expose institutional failures and create pressure for reform. Sometimes change happens because good people are willing to document uncomfortable truths, India reflected during a recent interview. That little girl's courage, combined with her father's strategic response, proved that individual dignity and systemic power could work together instead of against each other. Zara's story had become more than a viral moment. It represented a new model for addressing discrimination. Instead of choosing between personal healing and institutional change, the Williams family had insisted on both. They'd transformed individual trauma into collective progress. As Zara concluded her speech in Washington, she offered the same question that had opened her story. Have you ever watched injustice happen and wondered if you could make a difference? She paused, looking out at hundreds of young faces. The answer is yes, but it requires three things: the courage to document what you see, the wisdom to respond strategically rather than emotionally, and the persistence to demand systemic change rather than just individual apologies. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your dignity matters. These real-life stories of transformation prove that individual courage, when amplified by community support and strategic action, can reshape entire systems. Zara Williams didn't just reclaim her own dignity. She created space for countless other children to travel without fear of discrimination. But this is just one story among thousands waiting to be told. Black voices across America are documenting injustice, demanding accountability, and creating change through the power of truth-telling and strategic action. What discrimination have you witnessed? What injustice needs to be exposed? What system needs to be changed? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let your voice join the chorus of people who refuse to accept discrimination as normal. Every story shared makes it harder for institutions to ignore the reality of bias in their systems. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for Black Voices Uncut, where we amplify stories of strategic resistance, systemic change, and the quiet power of dignity under pressure. Together, we're not just sharing touching stories. We're building a movement that transforms individual experiences into collective power for justice. Your story could be next. Are you ready to be heard? Keep your hands off what isn't meant for you! The sharp slap against James Turner's wrist echoed through the luxury hotel kitchen. Food and beverage. Director Pamela Whitaker's voice cut like a knife. Those aren't for the help. Know your place. Heat rushed to his face as nearby executives exchanged uncomfortable glances, his dignity scattered like the crumbs from the corporate lunch tray. Meridian Hotel Group dominated the luxury market. Their flagship hosted elite corporate events weekly. Marble floors gleamed. Power radiated. James Turner had survived 12 years behind those walls. Assistant kitchen manager, 42. Widowed, a culinary school graduate working 2 jobs. Cancer took his wife 3 years ago. Medical bills emptied their savings. Now his son's medical school tuition consumed every dollar he earned. Kitchen staff respected James. Management didn't. Pamela Whitaker changed everything after her appointment 8 months ago. White employees got better schedules. Promotions shifted away from minorities. Customer compliments about black staff vanished from records. CEO Daniel Hayes reviewed reports in the presidential suite. 58 self-made. He'd expanded Meridian from 3 properties to 30 nationwide. His quarterly inspections struck fear. He saw everything but remained invisible to staff. Silver hair, custom suits. Few knew the man behind the reputation. James's alarm blared at 4:30 a.m. He rose silently in the dark, careful not to wake the neighbors in their thin-walled apartment building. He checked on his sleeping son David's textbooks still open on his desk before slipping out. The hospital kitchen welcomed him at 5 a.m. For 8 hours, he prepared meals for patients with specific dietary needs. The work was methodical, institutional. By 1 p.m., he changed uniforms in his car and drove across town to Meridian, where he would remain until 10 p.m. 16-hour days, 6 days a week. The relentless schedule served a purpose. David's medical school loans required $1,850 monthly. The lingering medical bills from his wife's treatment added another $575. Their modest 2-bedroom apartment cost $1,200. The math never changed. James needed both jobs to keep his promise to his late wife that their son would become a doctor. At Meridian, James moved with precision. He had been passed over for promotion to executive kitchen manager 4 times, despite glowing performance reviews. The latest rejection came 3 months after Pamela's arrival. "We're looking for someone with more polish," she had explained, while promoting a less experienced white colleague. The rhythmic sound of kitchen doors swinging, the constant chop of knives against cutting boards, and the hiss of steam from industrial dishwashers created the soundtrack of James's second life. He absorbed it all with quiet dignity, saving his energy for work rather than complaint. The Morrison Tech Investors Banquet filled the grand ballroom with Silicon Valley executives and venture capitalists. CEO. Hayes attended personally, working the room with practiced charm. In the kitchen, James supervised the plating of a 5-course dinner that had taken 3 days to prepare. As the event concluded, staff began clearing substantial leftovers, perfectly good food bound for disposal. James watched as waiters discarded untouched dinner rolls, sliced beef tenderloin, and gourmet sides into large bins. "Ms. Whitaker," James approached respectfully as service wound down, "there's quite a bit of untouched food tonight. Would it be possible for me to take some home? My son's been studying all week for his medical boards, and I haven't had time to shop." Pamela turned from her clipboard, eyebrows raised. Several executives lingered nearby, waiting for their coats. "Our food isn't charity, James," she replied, voice carrying across the kitchen. "If you can't afford groceries, perhaps you need a better-paying job." The kitchen fell silent. Line cooks stopped mid-motion. Waitstaff suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere. James felt every eye that wasn't looking directly at him. "I understand," he said quietly, maintaining eye contact. "Thank you for clarifying the policy." What James didn't see was CEO Hayes pausing in the doorway, listening to the entire exchange. Hayes watched as James straightened his shoulders and returned to work, directing staff with the same professionalism as before the humiliation. As James left that night, empty-handed but with dignity intact, a simple question hung in the air. Would he report this treatment, or would he silently endure as he had before? James arrived at Meridian precisely at 1:45 p.m. the next day. The routine remained unchanged, crisp uniform, personal knives in their roll case, scheduled check-in at the staff board. But today, something was different. His name, previously listed for banquet supervision, now appeared next to kitchen deep clean. He blinked, checked again. No mistake. Schedule adjustment. Pamela's voice came from behind him, the subtle designer perfume announcing her presence before her words. She held a steaming coffee in one manicured hand, tablet in the other. We need someone with your attention to detail on the cleaning crew today. James turned slowly, maintaining professional composure. The Wilson wedding is tonight. I planned the menu personally, consulted with the family 3 times. Plans change. She smiled thinly, eyes cold. Stevens will handle the event. Unless this is a problem for you. James felt eyes on them from across the kitchen. Line cooks pretending to focus on prep work. Servers hovering near the service station. All watching without watching. No problem at all, Ms. Whitaker. His voice remained even. I'll start in the walk-in freezers. Excellent. I knew I could count on you, could count on. She turned away, dismissal clear in her posture. For the next 8 hours, James scrubbed grease traps, sanitized freezer walls, and scoured equipment normally handled by new hires or dedicated cleaning staff. His hands cracked from industrial-strength cleaners. His knees ached from hours on tile floors. Yet each task was completed to perfection, surfaces gleaming in his wake. During his break, he overheard Stevens, the newly appointed banquet supervisor, frantically searching for the Wilson wedding notes, the special dietary restrictions, the bride's allergy concerns, all information James had carefully documented and filed. James, Stevens approached, desperation evident. The notes for tonight. Second drawer, blue folder, all restrictions highlighted in yellow. Seating chart attached with table numbers corresponding to dietary needs. James answered without looking up from his meal. Stevens exhaled with relief. Thanks, man. I don't know why they switched this dash. Just make sure the bride's father gets the shellfish-free option. He won't mention his allergy, but it's severe. Stevens nodded gratefully and hurried away. Meanwhile, in the executive offices upstairs, CEO Hayes summoned the head of security to his temporary suite. I need the employee file for James Turner, he instructed. Full employment history, performance reviews, commendations, complaints, everything. The security chief nodded. Will take about 20 minutes to compile, sir. Also, I want to review the kitchen security footage from last night. Specifically, the interaction between Turner and Whitaker. The security chief's expression shifted subtly. Sir? Is there a problem? Hayes asked. No, sir. I'll have everything brought up immediately. 30 minutes later, Hayes studied the thick folder spread across his desk. James Turner's employment application from 12 years ago, culinary degree with honors from a respected institute. 6 commendation letters from guests specifically naming him. Perfect attendance record across more than a decade. Performance reviews consistently exceeding expectations until 8 months ago when they suddenly became merely satisfactory with vague criticisms. Hayes tapped his finger on the most recent review. Lacks leadership presence. Communication could improve. Not fully aligned with department vision. Generic criticism without specific incidents or examples. He switched to the security footage. The interaction from the previous night played out exactly as he had witnessed it, James approaching respectfully, Pamela's public humiliation, James maintaining dignity despite the blow. Hayes rewound and watched again, noting the reactions of other staff, the averted eyes, the discomfort, the familiarity with this pattern. The kitchen clock ticked relentlessly as James continued his assigned cleaning. The industrial dishwasher ground through another cycle. Chemical cleaners burned his nostrils as he scrubbed equipment that already gleamed. The question hung silently in the air. Would James stand up for himself, or was the risk of losing this job too great? 2 days later, chaos erupted in the wine cellar during afternoon inventory. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, $1,200 each, missing from their designated slots. The sommelier reported directly to Pamela, who immediately stormed into the kitchen during lunch preparation. "Turner!" she called sharply, voice cutting through the kitchen noise. "My office!" Now. The entire staff froze momentarily. James carefully set down his knife, wiped his hands methodically on his towel, and nodded to his assistant to continue the garlic mince. The walk through the kitchen felt interminable, every eye tracking his movement. Inside her glass-walled office designed to showcase her authority to passing guests, Pamela didn't offer him a seat. She remained standing behind her desk, posture rigid with accusation. "Care to explain the missing wine?" Her tone suggested she already had her conclusion. James kept his expression neutral. "Which wine would that be, Ms. Whitaker?" "Don't play dumb. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, nearly $4,000 worth." "I don't have access to the wine cellar." She scoffed. "You have master keys as assistant manager." "Those keys don't include the wine cellar." James's voice remained calm, factual. "The cellar requires the digital fingerprint system installed last year. My prints aren't authorized. Someone took 3 bottles Tuesday night. You worked late. I was supervising the Johnson anniversary dinner until 10 p.m. 20 staff members can verify my location throughout the evening." Pamela's eyes narrowed. "The system shows the cellar door opened at 11:20 p.m. I clocked out at 10:15. The security log will confirm it, as will the parking garage camera showing my departure." The tension between them stretched taut. Through the glass walls, James could see kitchen staff stealing glances toward the office, speculation running wild. "We'll see about that." Her dismissal was clear. "Don't leave town." James returned to the kitchen, aware of whispers following him. No one met his eyes directly. The isolation was strategic. Separate the target, make them vulnerable, create doubt. "Back to work," he said quietly to his station team. "The salmon won't prep itself." In the security office, CEO Hayes watched the entire exchange on monitors. His jaw tightened as he reviewed access logs showing the wine cellar entry authorized by Pamela's fingerprint at 11:20 p.m., exactly as stated. The same logs showed James's departure through the employee exit at 10:17 p.m. "Has anyone informed Ms. Whitaker of the fingerprint records?" Hayes asked the security chief. "She hasn't requested them, sir." Hayes nodded slowly. "Don't volunteer the information. I want to see how this plays out." That night, James sat at his kitchen table after David had gone to bed. He opened his personal notebook, leather-bound, a gift from his late wife. Inside, meticulous entries documented every interaction, every slight, every questionable management decision. He recorded the day's accusation with precision time, location, exact wording, witnesses present. As he wrote, he remembered his late wife's words during her final months. "Your patience isn't weakness, it's strategic. Know when to wait and when to act." "I'm trying to find that line, Marie," he whispered to her memory. The next morning, tension filled the kitchen. Staff divided into clusters, conversations dropping to whispers when James approached. The sommelier confirmed the missing wine hadn't been located. Security conducted interviews with select staff, James noticeably excluded from the investigation, despite being the primary suspect in Pamela's eyes. Steam filled the kitchen as stock pots simmered. Glass clinked as staff nervously inventoried remaining wine bottles under supervision. James breathed steadily, focusing on lunch preparation with the same precision he always showed. Would anyone stand up for him, or was he truly alone in this workplace? Saturday brought the governor's charity gala 300 guests, including state politicians, business leaders, and celebrities. Meridian's most prestigious annual event, with media coverage guaranteed. James arrived at 6 a.m. to begin preparations, only to learn the executive chef had fallen ill overnight with food poisoning. Despite his recent demotion and the swirling wine theft allegations, the kitchen staff naturally turned to James for leadership. They followed his direction without question, the unspoken acknowledgement of his expertise transcending official hierarchy. While managing the massive food preparation effort, James had an inspiration. For the dessert course, he created a spectacular chocolate sculpture for each table-intricate edible art featuring the charity's logo intertwined with the state symbol. He worked through his break, hands moving with artistic precision, transforming chocolate into architecture. When the ballroom doors opened for dinner, guests gasped audibly at the presentation. Phones emerged immediately, capturing photos of the dramatic centerpieces. Social media buzz began before the first course was served. During the main course, the governor himself approached the kitchen to compliment the chef. Pamela intercepted him at the door. "Governor Williams, so pleased you're enjoying the evening," she beamed. "Magnificent presentation," he replied. "Your pastry chef is an artist. That chocolate work is museum quality." Pamela smiled broadly. "Thank you, Governor." "Our team worked very hard on the concept. Please extend my personal compliments to whoever created those sculptures. Haven't seen craftsmanship like that since my visit to Paris." "I certainly will," she assured him, never glancing toward James, who worked within earshot. The event ended with thunderous applause and record-breaking donation pledges. As staff began the extensive cleanup process, Pamela cornered James in the now empty ballroom, waiting until they were alone. "Who authorized the chocolate sculptures?" Her voice cut through the quiet space, echoing slightly against the high ceiling. James continued gathering his specialized tools. "The executive chef approved the concept last week before falling ill." "Those weren't in the approved menu. I reviewed it personally." The opportunity presented itself with Chef Morris absent. The materials were already on hand for the planned dessert. "You overstepped. Again." She moved closer, invading his personal space. The approved dessert was chocolate mousse, not art installations. The guests seemed pleased. "That's not the point." She stepped even closer, voice dropping dangerously. "You're trying to make me look bad." "Stealing my spotlight with the governor." "I'm trying to do my job," James replied evenly. "Create the best possible experience for our guests." "Your job is what I say it is." Her finger jabbed toward his chest, stopping just short of touching him. "This is insubordination. First the wine, now this." James straightened to his full height, voice remaining calm. "I've documented every instance of discrimination for 3 years, Ms. Whitaker. Every schedule change, every overlooked promotion, every interaction like this one. I have dates, times, and witnesses." She laughed sharply, the sound brittle against the empty ballroom's acoustics. "Playing the race card? How predictable. How tiresome." "It's not a card," James replied. "It's my reality." Through the partially open door at the back of the ballroom, CEO Hayes watched the exchange, his expression darkening with each word. Sugar's sweet scent lingered in the air. Bitterness filled James's mouth as he maintained his professional demeanor. His calm voice cut through Pamela's dismissive laughter. Would James finally take action against this treatment, and at what cost to his family's future? James left work at midnight, exhaustion heavy in his shoulders after the 18-hour day. The parking garage was nearly empty, his 10-year-old Honda sitting alone in the employee section. He didn't notice the black Audi pulling out several cars behind him as he exited onto the main street. CEO Hayes followed at a careful distance, headlights dimmed. He recognized the impropriety. This wasn't company policy. Definitely not legal without cause. But after what he'd witnessed, he needed to understand the full picture. James stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy in a strip mall. Hayes parked across the lot, watching as James entered and then exited 7 minutes later with a small white bag, prescription medication perhaps. The Honda continued through increasingly modest neighborhoods. 20 minutes later, James parked at Oakwood Gardens Apartments, a clean but clearly budget-conscious complex in a working-class neighborhood. Hayes parked across the street, observing as James climbed 3 flights of exterior stairs to Unit 307. Light spilled from the apartment as James entered. Through partially open blinds, Hayes glimpsed a living room. Simple furniture, well-maintained, nothing extravagant. A file cabinet in the corner caught his attention, the drawer partially open, revealing neatly labeled folders meticulously organized. The neighborhood streetlights cast dim pools on cracked pavement. Hayes's luxury car hummed quietly in the night. The cool air carried the scent of someone's late dinner from a nearby apartment. A dog barked in the distance. Why was the CEO personally following James? And what did he plan to do with what he learned about this man's private life? Hayes sat in his car for 15 minutes, contemplating his next move. This wasn't corporate procedure, far from it. But conventional methods had clearly failed if discrimination this blatant had flourished under his leadership. Decision made, he approached the apartment building quietly. Unit 307 occupied the corner position, windows glowing warmly against the night. Voices drifted through a partially open window, the apartment evidently too warm despite the evening chill. "Dad, you look exhausted." A young man's voice articulate, concerned, educated. Long shift. Governor's Gala, big success. James sounded drained but satisfied. "You need to eat something. I made pasta." "Not hungry." "How was your study group?" "Productive. We covered cardiovascular pathology all evening. Dr. Winters might include it on the exam." Hayes positioned himself where he could see inside without being obvious, a questionable action he'd never imagined taking when he arrived in town for a routine inspection. Through the window, he observed James sitting at a small kitchen table with a young man in his 20s, clearly his son David. Medical textbooks surrounded them, stacked in organized piles. Anatomical diagrams and study charts covered one wall entirely. "You should eat something." David pushed a plate toward his father. "You're losing weight again." "Already ate at work." James lied with practiced ease. "No, you didn't." "I can tell when you haven't eaten all day." James smiled tiredly. "Can't fool a future doctor, can I?" "Not this one." David watched his father take a small bite of pasta. "I got my immunology exam results back." James paused, fork midair. "And? A, 94%. James's face transformed completely, exhaustion replaced by undisguised pride. "That's my boy. Top of your class?" "Second. Missed first by 2 points to Kim." "Next time." James squeezed his son's shoulder affectionately. "You'll get it next time." "Dad, I've been thinking. I could take a semester off. Work full-time at the hospital. They're always hiring support staff." James' expression hardened immediately. "Absolutely not. These double shifts are killing you. I see it every day. This discussion is closed." James's tone was final, brooking no argument. "Your education comes first, always." Hayes studied the apartment more carefully. Despite modest furnishings, everything appeared meticulously maintained. Books organized by subject. Counter surfaces spotless. No luxury items, but dignity in every corner. He noticed photos on the wall. James, in a professional chef's uniform at what appeared to be a culinary competition, focused intently on plating a complex dish. An award certificate partially visible beside it, National Minority Chef Recognition, first place 7 years earlier. A woman's photo James's late wife presumably watched over the living space from a simple frame adorned with a small dried flower. Warm light bathed the modest apartment. The smell of simple but expertly prepared food reached Hayes even through the window. Father and son laughed quietly despite their serious conversation, a bond of deep respect evident in every interaction. Later, after David retreated to his bedroom to continue studying, James remained at the kitchen table alone. The apartment quieted except for the occasional turning of pages from behind David's closed door. James pulled out a leather-bound notebook from his work bag and opened it methodically. Hayes watched as he uncapped a pen and began writing with precise movements, documenting the day's events. His handwriting appeared impeccable, a chef's attention to detail evident in each careful stroke. As he wrote, a framed photo on the table caught his attention. He paused, touching it gently, his wife's smiling face looking back at him from happier times. "I'm trying, Marie." His whisper barely carried through the window. "Some days are harder than others." Hayes watched as memory overtook James, his eyes distant, a flashback evidently playing in his mind. A hospital room, his wife's thin hand in his, the machines beeping steadily. "Promise me," she had said, voice weakened by months of treatment. "David will become a doctor, no matter what." "I promise," he had answered without hesitation. "And promise you'll stand up for yourself when it matters. Don't let them take your dignity." "I promise that too." Now James faced the impossible balance: fight for recognition and risk losing everything, or continue enduring discrimination to secure his son's future. Justice versus stability, dignity versus security. Hayes noticed something he'd missed initially. On David's desk, visible through his partially open door, sat law books mingled with medical texts. Constitutional law, employment law, civil rights litigation, not standard medical school reading. James's pen scratched softly against paper as he completed his daily record. The apartment clock ticked steadily in the background. His wife's photo seemed to watch him with patient eyes, waiting for a decision he wasn't yet ready to make. Hayes returned to Meridian Hotel at 2 a.m., mind churning with everything he'd witnessed. The night manager jumped visibly when he appeared at the front desk. "Sir, we weren't expecting. I need the employee files. All performance reviews for kitchen staff. Last 5 years. Now, sir? Now." In his temporary office, Hayes spread the documents across his desk. James Turner's file revealed a clear pattern once examined chronologically. Exemplary reviews until approximately 8 months ago. Recommendations for promotion from 3 different executive chefs. All denied for increasingly vague reasons. Hayes compared credentials meticulously. James's culinary degree from the Institute of Culinary Excellence outranked the current kitchen manager's technical certification from a community college program. His experience exceeded Pamela's own background in both years and variety. He pulled Pamela's hiring records and subsequent management decisions, creating a timeline. Disturbing patterns emerged under scrutiny. Minorities systematically disadvantaged through schedule manipulation, disciplinary actions, and promotional opportunities. Formal complaints mysteriously resolved without action. Documented misconduct dismissed or minimized. Hayes stood and walked to his window, staring out at the city lights spread below the luxury hotel. His own reflection stared back: gray hair, expensive suit, the trappings of success built over decades in the hospitality industry. He remembered his own beginnings. Dishwasher at 19, working through college. The manager who saw his potential and gave him his first real opportunity despite his lack of connections or pedigree. "I've lost touch," he murmured to himself, the realization settling heavily. Built a company that claims to value merit while allowing this to happen. He picked up his phone and dialed a number despite the hour. It was answered immediately. "This is Hayes. I need the corporate HR director in my office at Meridian by 8 a.m. tomorrow, and tell the legal team to be on standby for a video conference at 7 a.m. He hung up, decision crystallizing. The question remained. Would he act decisively on what he'd discovered, or would corporate politics and liability concerns protect Pamela Whitaker? Hayes paced his presidential suite at 7 a.m. sharp, freshly showered but unrested. 3 video screens displayed serious faces, Meridian's legal counsel connecting remotely from corporate headquarters. "These discrimination patterns are clear," he stated, flipping through evidence compiled overnight. "Systematic, documented, potentially actionable." "Concerning," agreed the lead attorney, choosing her words carefully. "But proving intent requires—" "I don't need to prove intent in court," Hayes interrupted. "I need to fix my company before this becomes a legal nightmare. We have an employee who's documented 3 years of discriminatory treatment. He could file a lawsuit tomorrow." "Has he threatened legal action?" asked another attorney. "No. That's the remarkable part. He's still trying to work within our system despite years of being stonewalled." "Then perhaps a transfer for this employee—" "That's not solving the problem," Hayes cut in sharply. "That's avoiding it. I want solutions, not evasions." The legal team exchanged glances, recognizing Hayes' resolve. They shifted from damage control to constructive action, outlining the necessary steps for proper investigation and remedy. Hayes dispatched orders rapidly. The regional HR director would arrive by 10 a.m. An unannounced operational audit would begin immediately. Employee interviews would be scheduled throughout the day. "And Ms. Whitaker? How do you want to handle her?" asked the HR representative. "For now, business as usual. I want to observe her unguarded." James arrived at Meridian at 1:45 p.m., immediately noting unusual activity. Corporate suits clustered in conference rooms normally reserved for wedding consultations. Management staff whispered in corners, tension evident in their postures. Pamela barked orders more sharply than usual, her typical composure fraying at the edges. "All department heads meeting. 4 o'clock, mandatory," she announced, passing James without making eye contact. "Bring your performance metrics." James nodded acknowledgement, catching fragments of conversation as he passed the employee break room. "Corporate audit. Hayes himself requesting documents. Personnel records pulled overnight." His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from David. "Got my pharmacology results. Call me when you can." "Good news." James smiled briefly, heart lightening despite the workplace tension. He texted back a quick, "Proud of you," before tucking the phone away. He noticed Pamela watching him from across the kitchen, her eyes narrowing at his momentary smile. She turned sharply away when caught observing, her body language broadcasting suspicion and hostility. The air thickened with tension as the afternoon progressed. Whispers followed James through hallways and storage areas. Management suits invaded kitchen territory with clipboards and tablets. James focused on lunch service preparation, alert to the changing atmosphere but maintaining his professional demeanor. At 4 p.m. sharp, staff gathered in the grand ballroom per instruction. Tables had been removed, with chairs arranged in rows facing a podium. Frontline workers clustered together, separate from management staff who occupied the front rows. James chose a seat in the back row. Silent, observant, prepared for anything. Pamela stood near the podium, posture rigid with nervous energy. She checked her watch repeatedly, whispered intensely with the hotel manager, and scanned the room with growing impatience. At 4:05, the ballroom doors opened. CEO Hayes entered, flanked by the regional HR director and 2 assistants carrying tablets. The room fell immediately silent, all conversations ceasing mid-sentence. "Thank you all for coming," Hayes began. His voice carried natural authority without raising volume. "I'm Daniel Hayes, While some of you may recognize me from photos or previous visits, I realize we haven't properly met. Eyes darted around the room. Management staff straightened their postures, adjusting ties and smoothing blazers. Meridian Hotel Group was built on principles of excellence and respect, Hayes continued, scanning the assembled staff. Today, we're conducting a comprehensive review of our operations, focusing particularly on our employment practices. Pamela stepped forward, professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Hayes, I've prepared a presentation on our department's achievements and metrics for the last quarter. That won't be necessary, Ms. Whitaker. Hayes's tone left no room for discussion. We're approaching this differently today. The HR director moved forward, distributing tablets to staff members in each row. This is an anonymous survey about your work experience at Meridian. Your honest input is critical and protected by our non-retaliation policy, which is outlined on the first screen. Pamela moved through the rows, smiling tightly at staff as they received tablets. Remember, we're a family here, she murmured just loudly enough to be heard. Families handle issues internally. James accepted his tablet, noting the comprehensive nature of the questions. Workplace treatment, promotion opportunities, witnessed discrimination, specific incidents. He answered truthfully, aware of Pamela's gaze tracking respondents as they worked. The room filled with the soft tap of fingers on screens. Management staff shifted uncomfortably in the stiff hotel chairs. The subtle scent of executive cologne mingled with kitchen staff's work clothes, the class division evident even in the air they breathed. 30 minutes later, Hayes returned to the podium as staff completed the surveys. Behind him, a large screen descended from the ceiling. I want to share some preliminary findings, he announced. Not from today's survey, those results will require analysis, but from our corporate review. The screen illuminated with data charts, bar graphs, statistical analyses. Meridian's company-wide promotion rates show disturbing disparities when broken down by demographic categories. Hayes indicated the first chart. While our workforce is approximately 62% minority across all properties, only 17% of management positions are held by non-white employees. Murmurs rippled through the audience. At this location specifically, Hayes continued, advancing to the next slide, qualified minority candidates were passed over at 4 times the rate of their white counterparts during the past year, despite equal or superior qualifications and experience. Pamela stepped forward, professional mask slipping. Sir, if I may address these statistics. Not yet, Ms. Whitaker. Hayes's tone remained professional but firm. I have more to share before opening discussion. The presentation continued relentlessly. Pay disparities between demographically similar positions. Schedule inequities showing less desirable shifts disproportionately assigned to minority staff. Disciplinary actions targeting minorities at 3 times the rate of white employees. Consider this specific case study, Hayes said, displaying an anonymized employee profile. 12 years of exemplary service. Professional culinary degree with honors. 6 formal commendations from guests. Perfect attendance record. Passed over for promotion 4 times in favor of less qualified candidates. James kept his expression neutral, though he recognized his own career history stripped of identifying details. Additionally, Hayes continued, we've received substantial employee documentation cataloging discriminatory practices. 3 years of meticulous records detailing specific incidents, including dates, times, and witnesses. Pamela's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Her eyes scanned the room until they found James in the back row, a flash of understanding and anger crossing her features. Last night, Hayes revealed, drawing all attention back to the podium, I personally visited employees' homes. Murmurs rippled through the audience, louder this time. I saw firsthand the impact of our management decisions. An employee working double shifts to support his son through medical school after being repeatedly denied promotions and fair compensation that he demonstrably earned. James calmly reached into his bag, retrieving his documentation notebook and placing it on his lap. Several staff members noticed the action, their eyes widening with comprehension. The room temperature seemed to rise with the building tension. Pamela inhaled sharply, fists clenching at her sides. A current of solidarity began flowing through the staff rows as understanding dawned, connections forming between isolated incidents they'd witnessed or experienced. Pamela abandoned subtlety, striding toward the podium. "Mr. Hayes, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Some employees may be playing victim rather than addressing their performance issues. I can provide extensive documentation." James stood quietly. The movement drew all eyes in the room. "I don't need to play victim when I have facts." His voice carried calm authority through the silent ballroom. 3 years. Every incident documented. Times, dates, witnesses. He opened his notebook, pages filled with meticulous handwriting. October 15th, 2:30 p.m. Informed I lack polish for promotion, despite having the highest performance scores in the department. November 3rd, 8:15 a.m. Schedule changed without notice after requesting religious accommodation for my son's church confirmation. December 12th. Falsely accused of stealing wine despite video evidence showing my location elsewhere during the alleged theft. James turned a page. January 7th, written up for poor team communication one day after suggesting diversity training to HR. February 23rd. Customer commendation for my service removed from official record while similar commendations for white staff were publicized in the company newsletter. He closed the notebook deliberately. Each entry copied and sent to my son, who's pursuing a pre-law minor alongside his medical studies, focusing specifically on employment discrimination law. The room fell completely silent. Not even breathing seemed to disturb the air. Excellence doesn't need your permission to exist. James's words cut through the tension with quiet dignity. I never wanted special treatment. Only fair opportunity based on my work and qualifications. His simple statement broke the dam. Other staff members began speaking, at first hesitantly, then with growing confidence. She reduced my hours after I reported harassment from a guest. I was written up for being 5 minutes late once, while others were excused repeatedly. My customer compliments disappeared from the record after I was featured in a local newspaper. I was told my accent would confuse guests and removed from front-facing positions. Pamela's face reddened with each new accusation. This is absurd. You're all conspiring. Enough, Miss Whitaker. Hayes's voice silenced the room. The evidence speaks for itself. She attempted damage control, professional mask slipping completely. You're taking isolated incidents entirely out of context. I've significantly improved department efficiency and guest satisfaction metrics. By creating a hostile work environment, Hayes interrupted. By violating our core principles and possibly federal law. James remained standing, calm amid the storm he'd unleashed. His documentation, kept meticulously through years of mistreatment, laid bare the systematic discrimination that had flourished under plausible deniability and isolation of victims. This ends today, Hayes declared with quiet intensity. Not just for James, but for everyone. You'd take the word of kitchen staff over a director? Pamela challenged, desperation evident. I take facts over titles, Hayes responded evenly. And the facts are overwhelming. James addressed the room, voice steady. I could have quit. Found another job. Many did exactly that. But that changes nothing for those who come after us. Staff members nodded, some openly wiping tears. I stayed because I believe in accountability, James continued. Not revenge. Accountability. The light in the ballroom seemed brighter now. A weight visibly lifted from many shoulders as years of silent suffering found voice at last. Pamela glared at James, last vestiges of professionalism evaporating. How will you support your precious son when you're unemployed after this stunt? Who will hire you after I'm finished? The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Would Pamela find a way to retaliate against those who spoke out? Hayes stepped forward, positioning himself deliberately between Pamela and James. Ms. Whitaker is suspended, effective immediately pending full investigation. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Pamela's face drained of color. "You can't," she began. "I can and have. This decision is final." Hayes's tone remained measured but absolute. "Security will escort you to collect personal belongings. Your access codes are already deactivated." "On what grounds?" Pamela demanded, voice rising. "Credible allegations of discriminatory practices, violation of company policies, and potential creation of legal liability." Hayes maintained eye contact. "The investigation will determine next steps, but your continued presence would compromise its integrity." Two security officers appeared at the ballroom door, their presence making the situation's finality clear. "This isn't over," Pamela hissed, grabbing her tablet and purse. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she exited, back rigid with fury and humiliation. Hayes turned to face the assembled staff. "I apologize to each of you for allowing this situation to develop under my leadership. The failure of oversight was mine." The sincerity in his voice resonated through the room. No corporate doublespeak, no deflection of responsibility. "Effective immediately, all personnel decisions at this property will require regional approval. We're implementing a complete review of all promotions, disciplinary actions, and schedule assignments from the past year." He faced James directly. "Mr. Turner, pending review by an independent committee, I'm appointing you Interim Food and Beverage Director." Stunned silence gave way to spontaneous applause. Kitchen staff stood first, their hands coming together in unified support. Housekeeping followed, then front desk personnel. Even some management joined, recognizing the rightness of the moment. James stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hayes." Their handshake was firm, equal, professional respect flowing both ways. "Any immediate changes you'd recommend, Mr. Turner?" Hayes asked. James considered briefly. "Staff should be allowed to take leftover event food that would otherwise be discarded. It reduces waste and supports our team members who often struggle with food costs." Hayes nodded. "Make it official policy immediately." As the meeting dispersed, staff surrounded James. Congratulations, relief, gratitude. For many, it was the first time they'd witnessed justice prevail in their professional lives. "I knew you kept records," whispered Carmen, a senior line cook, "but I never thought anyone would listen." "You stood for all of us," added Tomas from housekeeping. James accepted their words with humility, understanding the responsibility that came with this victory. Change would need to be sustained, not just celebrated. 1 month later, Meridian Hotel Group announced company-wide policy changes. Hayes personally presented them at a staff meeting, the ballroom now arranged in a circle to symbolize the new collaborative approach. "First, an anonymous reporting system for discrimination concerns," he explained, demonstrating the smartphone application. "Reports go directly to corporate HR and an independent review board, completely bypassing local management." Staff nodded approvingly, several already downloading the app. "Second, a blind review process for all promotions, qualifications evaluated without names, photos, or identifying information until final rounds." James, now permanently appointed as Food and Beverage Director after external review confirmed his qualifications, sat beside Hayes at the head table. His presence represented tangible proof that change was real, not just promised. Third, mandatory diversity training for all management, including myself. Not just compliance training, but meaningful education on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias. Hayes gestured toward James. "Mr. Turner's leadership has already improved operations significantly. Guest satisfaction scores up 22%. Staff turnover reduced by 34%. Menu innovation receiving industry recognition. The assembled staff applauded, pride evident in their expressions. For the first time, many felt their workplace reflected their value. Pamela Whitaker had been reassigned to a smaller Meridian property in a different state, with a significant demotion to assistant manager. Her formal warning remained in her permanent file. She'd accepted these terms rather than face termination after the investigation confirmed multiple policy violations. Legal counsel had advised her that fighting the decision would likely lead to worse consequences. James implemented his own changes beyond Hayes's company-wide reforms, mentorship programs for staff seeking advancement, transparent scheduling that accommodated education and family needs, regular skills development workshops open to all employees regardless of position. His culinary innovations, once ignored or credited to others, now appeared on menus across the Meridian chain. His nameplate adorned the office door that had previously remained closed to him. Meeting rooms that once excluded him now welcomed his ideas and perspective. The kitchen operated with new energy. Staff moved with purpose and pride rather than fear. Creativity flourished where intimidation had previously dominated. Even customers noticed the difference, commenting on the improved atmosphere and service. James unlocked his apartment door at 6 p.m. home at a reasonable hour for the first time in years. "Dad?" David called from the kitchen. "You're early." "Director's privilege," James answered, setting down grocery bags filled with fresh ingredients. "And single job status." They prepared dinner together, a ritual recently reclaimed from the demanding schedule that had kept them apart. As they sat down to eat, David slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" James asked. "Open it." Inside, official university letterhead. Full scholarship for David's remaining medical education. "Academic Excellence Award," David explained, unable to contain his smile. "They only give 5 per year. Full tuition plus stipend." James stared at the letter, emotions overwhelming him. "You did it." "We did it," David corrected. "Your sacrifices made this possible. Now you can drop the hospital job completely." James nodded slowly. "Already gave notice. I'm also enrolling in the Executive Chef Certification program, getting back to my roots." "Mom would be so proud." David's voice softened. "Of both of us." James glanced at his wife's photo on the wall. "We did it, love. He's going to be okay." After dinner, James found an envelope that had been slipped under their door. Inside, a handwritten letter from CEO Hayes. "Mr. Turner," it read, "I offer my personal apology for a system that failed you and so many others. Your integrity in the face of injustice has transformed our company. Your restraint when you had every right to seek revenge speaks volumes about your character. Thank you for making Meridian better. Sincerely, Daniel Hayes." James folded the letter carefully. The celebration drink David poured made a gentle pop as he opened it. Their embrace carried years of shared struggle finally coming to fruition. His wife's photo seemed to smile more brightly from the wall. How would this change ripple through the entire company beyond just one hotel? 6 months later, Business Leadership Quarterly featured Meridian Hotel Group on its cover. The headline, "Corporate Culture Transformation Drives Record Growth." Inside, a full-spread article detailed the company's dramatic shift following the discrimination case. Diversity in management positions had increased 40% company-wide. Employee satisfaction reached all-time highs. Revenue grew 28% year over year, a remarkable achievement in the competitive luxury hotel market. "We discovered our biggest untapped resource was the talent we already employed but failed to recognize," Hayes explained in the interview. "Addressing systemic barriers didn't just fulfill our moral obligation. It unleashed innovation and commitment that transformed our business results." The article prominently quoted James. "Systemic change requires more than good intentions. It demands honest evaluation, accountability, and concrete action. What feels uncomfortable in the moment often leads to the greatest growth. The piece detailed Meridian's new mentorship program for culinary students from disadvantaged backgrounds. James's initiative, now implemented company-wide with corporate funding. 20 scholarships annually. Guaranteed internships. Career pathways designed to bring diverse talent into leadership positions. Even Pamela Whitaker appeared in the article. After sensitivity training and mentorship, she acknowledged her biases in a company case study now used for management training. "I didn't recognize how my preconceptions affected my decisions," she admitted. "Facing the evidence was difficult but necessary for my professional growth. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn rather than simply being terminated." Meridian's lobby now displayed fresh flowers arranged daily. Kitchen operations ran harmoniously under James's leadership. Management meetings included diverse voices contributing to the company's renewed success and innovation. Culinary Academy graduation day. James and Hayes attended together, watching the first cohort of mentorship students receive their certificates. Among them, 3 had already accepted positions at Meridian Properties. "From your perspective," the journalist covering the event asked James, "what's the key lesson in your journey?" James considered carefully before answering. Dignity preserved through adversity becomes the foundation for meaningful change. 12 words that encapsulated years of struggle and transformation. "The easy path would have been giving up or giving in," James continued. "But lasting change requires documentation, persistence, and strategic action. One voice becomes many when truth speaks to power." Hayes nodded in agreement. One person standing firm altered the course of an entire company. "Imagine what we could accomplish if more organizations listened to voices they've previously ignored." As the ceremony concluded, James supervised staff boxing leftover food, a practice now standard at all Meridian events. Every container labeled for employees to take home, a small but meaningful symbol of the larger transformation. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below, the narrator encouraged viewers. Subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation that remind us change is possible. What policies would you implement to ensure workplace equality? Comment your ideas, the prompt continued. Your experiences matter in creating better workplaces for everyone. The final image showed James watching proudly as his son David, now in his final year of medical school, volunteered at a community health clinic. A circle completed, a promise fulfilled, a legacy established. Proud smiles filled the graduation hall. Applause echoed for the achievements recognized. For James Turner, this taste of success proved sweeter than any dessert he had ever created. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below, the narrator encouraged viewers. These real-life stories remind us that dignity and persistence can transform unjust systems. If this touching story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful Black stories that illuminate the quiet strength found in everyday struggles. Your support helps us continue bringing these life stories to light.